Well, the Liberal Party in Canada, led by Mark Carney, has won the 2025 federal elections. Now, they have not secured a majority. They will have a minority. That's how it looks as of right now. They will secure a minority in the House of Commons, per the Radio Canada projections. And tonight, we are going to be looking at a huge question. Now that Liberals have won, the Alberta succession will begin. The Alberta, the Saskatchewan, the Manitoba succession will begin. There is no doubt about it. Conservatives are fed up. They're fed up. Conservatives in Canada are fed up with the Liberal majority in Ottawa that overrules them, that absolutely tries to stifle their economy, that completely tries to destroy their way of life. It's going to happen. I know a lot of people want to poo-poo on it, but it's going to happen. Even here, Danielle Smith, the Alberta Premier, has said hockey and nostalgia will not keep us together, and that they are serious. They're serious about a separation after the Liberal win in the Canadian elections. Now, the Canadians, the next Prime Minister will be Mark Carney. He is 60 years old. He is a former Bank of Canada and Bank of England governor and became the Liberal leader in March after Justin Trudeau resigned. It was really resigned in disgrace. It truly was. He had no prior elected official experience. He campaigned on his expertise in countering U.S. President Donald Trump in his trade policies and annexation threats. Because that's really what this turned into. This had nothing to do with policy. This had nothing to do about how the Liberals in Canada have destroyed the economy in Canada. They've absolutely destroyed the economy. They've destroyed this entire country of Canada. I don't even know if you can call it a country anymore at this point. The reality is the Liberals were able to turn this into a referendum on Donald Trump and the tariffs. And Donald Trump came out and said, he really didn't care. He wanted the Liberals to win. He felt like he could get a better deal if the Liberals won. But the reality is that's what this election became about. It became about Donald Trump. In Alberta, in Saskatchewan, and Manitoba, they will respond in kind. They will respond. This is not going to be over with. Donald Trump, of course, has been threatening to annex Canada, make it the 51st state, Governor Trudeau, all the bunch. He's done it all. And he slapped massive tariffs on the state of Canada. I should say the country of Canada. And really, this is what he ran on. Mark Carney ran on clean energy and diversifying trade from the U.S. That's what this was all about. Rekeying their economy towards China. But here's the reality. Canada's economy is 1/15 the size. They're like a $2 trillion economy compared to the U.S. We're like a $28 trillion economy. We will hurt them a lot more than they can hurt us, and there's no doubt about that. And, conservatives just a few months ago were leading in the polls by 20, 25 points. But as of April, fueled by this anti-Trump sentiment in Canada, the anti-annexation threats really propelled the Liberals, and even to the point where Pierre Poilievre lost his seat in Parliament. He lost his seat. A long shot candidate beat him. A Liberal candidate beat him. So not only is he not going to be the Prime Minister, he lost his seat in Parliament as well. And that's just the reality here. And obviously, the other two minority parties, the NDP and the Blocs, they lost a lot of seats as well. It's like, as you can see here, right now they only have the Blocs have 21, New Democrats have 4, and the Green Party has 1. They have 1 seat. Obviously, the Conservatives and Liberals have picked up a number. They've picked up a number of different seats in Parliament, but ultimately Liberals are going to be leading the way. But here's the reality. Alberta, they're going to freak out about this. This is not going to be okay. Alberta's already come out and said that it is not safe. There are not calm waters on the Western Front. There just aren't. This is the Liberals' 4th straight federal election win, which keeps Alberta and Ottawa on a complete collision course. Well, you have Alberta basically subsidizing the rest of Canada. And I think they want out. They want out. They don't want to do this. They do not want to be the ones who are subsidizing Greater Canada. They don't. And to be honest with them, I don't blame them. Why would they? Why would anyone want to subsidize the rest of Canada? The people of Ottawa have historically felt like marginalized. They felt less than by the politicians in Ottawa, especially under a Liberal government control. There's polls out right now, and let's see if I can get them pulled up right here, that show Only 24% of Albertans feel their province is respected by the rest of Canada. Only 24% of people, 1 in 4, so it's 3 in 4 believe they are not respected by the rest of Canada. Which, in comparison, roughly 50, about half of people in Canada. So it's like this is less than half of what the national average is. The national average is 1 in every 2 people. Here, you have 1 in every 4 people feel like they're respected in Alberta. In this sense of really alienation, it's been exacerbated by these policies, these anti-oil, anti-energy policies, like the National Energy Program in the 1980s, or really more recently the environmental regulations under Justin Trudeau and the Liberal government, the Liberal rule. And a Liberal victory led by Mark Carney is going to see as a continuation of this trend, intensifying frustration with constituents in Alberta. Because clearly Ottawa has no concern for Alberta. They clearly don't. They have no concern for them. And look at this. In Alberta, Saskatchewan, they both have a minority of people believe they are treated fairly by the national government. Because Alberta's economy relies heavily on oil and gas. Like, let's get this out there right away. Their government relies heavily on oil and gas. And Liberal policies are often viewed, and they're not just viewed, they are detrimental to the oil sector and the gas sector. For instance, the cancellation of the Energy East pipeline and the restrictions on the Trans Mountain expansion in 2019 really fueled a lot of this separationist sentiment. And a 2025 Liberal win is going to bring us closer and closer to separation. It's going to bring more and more regulations, more taxes, and such potential, even like an export tax on oil and gas, which would absolutely cripple the economy in Alberta. And the Premier Danielle Smith has demanded the repeal of 9 oil and gas-related Liberal policies, warning of a, quote, national unity crisis if it's unmet. And polling data shows that, as of right now, 30% of Albertans would choose to leave Canada if the Liberals win, up from 25% regardless of the election outcome. In Saskatchewan, it's 25%. Let's see what we can find here. In Saskatchewan, it's only 20%. Yes, initially, right off the bat, 33% if Liberals form a government. It's not a majority, but ultimately this small minority is growing and growing and growing. And it's going to continue to grow under this Liberal governance. It will, because who in Alberta profits from this? Like, let's be honest about this. Canada relies heavily on Alberta, and they totally take them for granted. The entire country of Canada takes Alberta for granted due to its significant contributions to the national economy, the energy sector, the federal fiscal system. Alberta is Canada's energy powerhouse. They produce 80% of the country's crude oil, roughly 4.2 million barrels per day in 2024, and roughly 70% of its natural gas, which fuels domestic energy needs and exports, primarily sent to the United States, which generates roughly $130 billion in annual oil and gas revenue. And Alberta's oil sands, they're the cornerstone of Alberta. They are. It's like 97% of Canada's oil reserves are located there. Because Alberta contributes roughly 17, 18, 19% to Canada's GDP, despite having only like 10 or 11% of the population. Its per capita GDP is almost $70,000. It is among the highest in Canada, which is solely driven by the energy and agriculture sector. And there are a lot of byproducts like the petrochemicals that are byproducts of it. That's also a pretty big industry or growing industry there. But Alberta's economic output really supports national growth and trade, with 70% of its exports going to the United States. 70% of it is going to the United States. And when Alberta makes all this money, a strong economy for Alberta means that it is a net contributor to Canada's equalization program, which redistributes wealth to less prosperous provinces. From 2007 or 8 to 2024, Alberta's net contribution to the federal budget was roughly $250 billion. They subsidized services in provinces like Quebec and the Maritimes. In 2024, Alberta's per capita fiscal contribution was roughly $13,000, compared with Ontario's, which was at $38,000, and Quebec's, which was negative $2,500. They were a net recipient here. Look at this right here. Right now, quote, right now, every man, woman, and child in Alberta pays $6,000 more into the national budget than they get back. Alberta is the only province that is a net contributor to that budget. By 2020, the number will exceed $20,000 per person, $40,000 per taxpayer. That will be the greatest wealth transfer in per capita terms in the Western world. In 2015, Alberta paid roughly $27 billion more into the federal treasury than it received back in services. And that, quote, anywhere else in the world, this would be a secessionist crisis. There is no other place in the world where you have one province that is lightly populated but very rich, that doesn't have a certain degree of rebellion. The redistribution system that Canada has with the transfer payments anywhere else would have social instability. But to be blunt, Canadians are just too damn polite, which I totally agree. They are. They're way too polite. Are you kidding me? You guys are working your ass off to subsidize these woke libtards in Ottawa? Like, that's what they're doing. Places like Ontario, in Quebec, Nunavut. It's like, you are, you want to go to New Brunswick, all these other provinces here. That's the reality. That is 100% the reality of this situation. They're just too damn polite. Why? Who would stick around? You guys are a net contributor. You guys subsidize the entire state, but yet the entire state just gets to SHIT on you all day long. Like that. Like, how is that fair? It just makes absolutely zero sense. And plus, Alberta's energy infrastructure, like their pipelines and its role as a logistics hub in Western Canada, facilitates national and international trade. Without Alberta, you could see huge swaths of the GDP. You could see 10, 15, 20% of the GDP of Canada disappear overnight. Not just because Alberta leaves. On top of that, because of all the infrastructure in place, you can't just put down a pipeline in a day or a week or 2 weeks or a month or 2 months. You may be able to make a dent on it, but I'm sure with all the liberal permanent and environmental BS you have to go through, the hoops you have to jump through, they wouldn't have the infrastructure to trade with the U.S. And, Mark Carney, he wants to really focus on trading with Canada. He wants to move away from the U.S. and build better relations with China. But that doesn't happen overnight. It doesn't. Plus, if you want to start trading more with China and less with Canada, how about you pay your fair share when it comes to defense spending? How about this? How about the U.S. does not protect you if someone invades Canada? If someone attacks Canada, it's the same thing with Greenland. Greenland wants their own independence, but yet they have 56,000 people who live on the island. Their GDP is like the GDP of like the city of San Diego, or like the city of New York. It's probably less than that. But they're just going to expect that the United States is going to defend them. We're going to defend Greenland or Canada. They don't have to pay for defense. We're just going to pay for it all. They can have their, fluffy social programs, which granted, in the U.S., we have a lot of social programs. We have way more than I think we should have. But they get to have their extra fluffy social programs in Canada. Well, they get to rely on the United States that we're going to defend them if something happens. Screw you. Trump should have open arms to Alberta. And here's the thing. Alberta, there's some talk that maybe Alberta just wants to separate and they don't want to become part of the U.S. Okay, well, you're going to have to make economic deals or become a territory of the U.S. It's just, the reality is you are completely surrounded by Canada or the U.S. You have to pick one or the other. Because we're not going to defend you either then. Become a territory. Have an economic deal with us. Let's make a deal. Because at the end of the day, the proximity to the U.S., the rail networks, the pipelines, it supports close to $200 billion in commerce. And Alberta's reliance on oil and gas, it does make it vulnerable, but it makes it vulnerable because of environmental policies at the federal level in Canada, such as carbon taxes or emission caps, which 100% strains its contributions, and tensions over equalization where Alberta, they feel like they pay more and get less. 65% of residents believe the system is unfair. Despite this, Canada's economic stability and energy security hinge on Alberta's resources and fiscal strength. So much of their security in Canada relies on Alberta, but they just get to poo-poo on them all day long. If Alberta decides that they're not going to succeed, they're just pathetic. They're just a pathetic country. You're going to get walked over. You're a bitch. You're just going to get walked over by Canada. That's what you are. You guys have them by the balls. You have all the power. Literally, the energy. You literally control 80% of the energy in Canada. succeed. And you know what? There is legal precedent on what they could do. In Canada, the Clarity Act, which has been approved by the Supreme Court of Canada, governs the process a province should follow to achieve separation. The first step in a province is a province-wide referendum with a clear question. So we're going to see what happens. I think it is very imminent that Alberta, Saskatchewan, maybe Manitoba, that you're going to see a serious consideration, especially in Alberta. Alberta just does so much. They do so much. Saskatchewan and Manitoba are kind of secondary. But at the end of the day, Alberta, they're so big. They contribute so much as far as a GDP. They contribute in equalization payments. They pay so much. They subsidize the rest of Canada. Canada would not function as a government. They could not function as a country if they did not have Alberta. And if I were someone from Alberta, I would take it very, very seriously, considering the fact that it is time to leave Canada. It's time. Become a territory of the United States. Even if you don't want to become a state, become a territory of the United States. Let's make a deal on economic prosperity. You don't have to pay the tariffs when they come into the U.S. You don't have to worry about carbon taxes or emission caps coming from Ottawa. We're going to make sure that you drill, baby, drill. We want to follow through on Trump's agenda to drill. Let's do it. Let's offer Alberta, let's give them $20 billion. Here, become part of the U.S. Here's $20 billion. We're going to produce so much profits for the United States in Alberta that they won't even know what hit them. They won't even, and why stop there? Saskatchewan, Manitoba. Let's go for Nunavut. You want to talk about Nunavut or the Northwest Territories or Yukon. Alaska's right here. Talk about when it comes to Arctic dominance. Especially when it comes to these Northwest Passages that are right here. And that's why Greenland is so important. Greenland and Canada are so important to not only national security, but to international security. We need both of them. We need all of it. And that's just the reality. We need to see all of it. Because if you're looking on a map right here, if you're looking on a map here, you can clearly see up here, Greenland, we need to get in the Arctic Circle. You know what gets us there? Nunavut, the Northwest Territories, Greenland. Even some of these smaller islands that I think are owned by like Norway or something. We need to get into the Arctic Circle. We just need to. For international security, for national security. Because at the end of the day, who's going to take care of this? Who's going to defend Canada? Canada pays less than 1% of GDP towards their defense. It's a joke. They're a complete joke of a country. We need to be able to defend ourselves from Russia. This is all we have in the Arctic Circle right now. We've got one military base in Greenland, and we've got Alaska. We need the Northwest Territories. We need Nunavut. Let's do it. Let's take it all. Screw Canada. Let's take all of it. Maybe not all of it. We can leave the more liberal parts. Okay, Ontario, Quebec, New Brunswick, Nova Scotia. Sure. You guys are a bunch of stupid liberals. Stay there. We don't want you. We're going to take Manitoba, Saskatchewan, Alberta, British Columbia, Yukon, Northwest Territories, Nunavut. We're going to take it all. And we're going to make a ton of money doing it. So that's going to wrap things up for today, folks. I truly believe Alberta will break away from Canada. This liberal victory, this is the last straw. A decade of liberal control, it is going to come to an end. Alberta is going to be done subsidizing the greater Canada. So that's going to wrap things up for today, folks. Let me know your thoughts down below. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button. Make sure you never miss another video from us again in the future, and we will catch you next time.